There are lots of things I love about Kingston. I think one of the main ones would be the green spaces that we've got all around the Royal Parks and Hampton Court and all the various areas, and the river, of course.
It's like the lung, isn't it, of Kingston? It's a breathing space.
And it adds so much to the identity of the place as well.
And an identity. It's Kingston upon Thames.
I love living in Kingston, but like most towns, it's just not fully prepared for the biggest challenges of our age, which is peak oil and climate change.
So many aspects of the way we live over the last century really have been related to this expanding supply of fossil fuels, especially oil. The graph for the demand of oil goes like this, it's sort of straight up. We want more and more of it, and we seem to be gearing our society on the assumption that there's more, but it's just not there.
The way oil fields work is that as you take more of the oil out of them, the pressure in the field drops, and so you inevitably get a lower and lower flow rate as time goes by. And that's true of an individual oil field, it's also true of a region, it's also true of the world.
As oil becomes harder to extract, it becomes less available, far more expensive, which then greatly affects the availability of products and services that we depend upon.
Everyone's very aware of climate change these days and the need to watch carbon, but the interaction between that and peak oil is quite an important issue that isn't really widely understood.
If you're just thinking about climate change on its own, then you're thinking about techno fixes, you're thinking about big sunshades in the sky and all this other jazz. But if you're thinking about peak oil on its own, you're thinking, the oil's running out, let's burn anything we can. And that's obviously not taking account of climate change. And so it's only by uniting the two that you can actually get a full picture of what's going on.
A year ago I heard all about sort of peak oil for the first time, and all the sort of horror stories of what could happen, the worst case scenario, can you just walk away, forget about it. And the transition town, from what I see, is sort of the positive steps. It's like, well, maybe the worst will happen, but let's look at it from the sense of what can we be doing, how can we look at where we're living now and make it a better place to be.
I think it's about sort of communities being able to look after themselves and be self-sufficient. People helping each other out, that kind of thing.
Trying to adapt and sort of prepare to inevitable change before we sort of just fall into it without actually sort of doing anything proper about it.
Accepting that we've got to have a different way of how we live, more localised definitely, and I think a more human face to the way we live.
It's about accepting a lower energy future is inevitable and deciding to act now and together to build our resilience to future energy shocks.
It's grassroots. We don't have to wait for the government, we don't have to wait for the council, we can actually start doing something ourselves.
It's about sense of place, it's about pride and identity and taking an interest in your community.
Acting on a scale where you can see the practical difference that you're making, but also on a scale where you know your voice is important and you have a say in what happens.
TGK's biggest achievement is getting some of the concepts behind Transition Town into the general consciousness in Kingston.
We've been showing films about peak oil and climate change, little animations, everything from little animations through to serious BBC films.
Talks, debates, demonstrations, all of which have helped us to understand the implications of peak oil, how they connect with climate change, and the sorts of changes that we need to make as we become a decarbonised society. We believe that the solution comes from the community itself, and so one of the events we held was a visioning in the church in the middle of Kingston.
200 plus people dropping in and coming and sharing their views, and the amount of consensus there is absolutely stunning.
The Our Kingston, Our Future project built upon this event. We got funding from the Learning Revolution Fund in partnership with ArtGym, and we created 4 intergenerational creative workshops that brought different generations and cultures together. And so we had people remembering the past, exploring the present, and imagining a future through art.
I think another thing that's really exciting about transition is the sort of practical aspect to it, the fact that you're getting your hands dirty and working on a human scale with a set of people that you know and that you are also involved in your community with you. You can just get together and do stuff that you can actually see it making a real difference, and also other people can see it and think that they'd like to get involved with something like that.
We've now set up a number of themed groups. We've got the council group.
Our remit was to forge links between Transition Town Kingston and the council.
Engaging with council initiatives, but also giving them the information and the enthusiasm they need to engage with our initiatives.
The business group.
We're trying to activate businesses to think more green agendas. We're trying to encourage those businesses that are already latched on to the green initiatives, trying to promote them and trying to get others to do more.
The food, energy and schools groups, all of which are starting to implement these practical projects that are making a difference on the ground.
One of the experiments we have at the moment is a food co-op, where a handful of volunteers are now trialling how we can get this wholesale local organic produce available to people locally.
And one of the guiding principles of the co-op is that we want to get back to basics in terms of eating better and quality food and healthier food, as well as back to basics in terms of being less reliant on food from halfway around the world and more reliant on our local producers and ourselves.
Stitching Time is a series of once-a-month workshops. They're quite sociable. People come along and chat, they have a cup of tea, they eat biscuits, and they bring a project, or they learn how to do something, or they show someone else how to do something. What made me set it up was really hearing about somebody on the radio who, when her children's shirt buttons fell off, threw the shirts away and bought new ones, and I was so horrified by that. I mean, both the waste, which is terrible, but also the fact that there seemed to be someone who didn't know how to sew on a button, and I thought there's this awful waste and also a terrible skills deficit.
Garden Share, it's like a marriage bureau. It marries somebody with a garden who may be disabled or elderly or even not interested in the garden with people who haven't got access.
We went into some local primary schools with our partner, Bounce Theatre, with a project called Planet Phoenix. So the basis of the drama was that we'd messed up planet Earth so much that we had to send some astronauts out to find a better planet, one that we could live on, and start again. The children were involved in the play and they went visiting different planets, and on each of these planets they were rejected. They were turned away because they were too much of a threat to those other planets. So in the end they actually got a second chance with planet Earth.
We got a number of people in the community who've already got a long way down the energy efficiency route. For example, Christopher Hines, and he was kind enough to open up his home for us all to go and take a look at the technology that he'd installed, and he explained it to us. And for a number of people, I think that was an eye-opening experience.
You know, we actually feel we're doing something. We're not just sitting around worrying about things or talking about them.
Hopefully Transition Town Kingston's biggest achievement hasn't happened yet, because I think we've just been laying the foundations, if you like, over the last couple of years.
We've brought people together, we've connected, and we've created a kind of a foundation now to go on and actually make serious changes.
And I've met so many lovely people from just every corner of the community who I wouldn't have met otherwise.
There's no fixed agenda, we just do whatever we can and what people care about.
With a small group of like-minded people, you can make a difference to your locality,
Come to one of the public events, find out more, join one of the working groups. There's something for everybody.
If you've got an idea in mind, flag it up, see who else you can get to join you, and come and start a project.
If you care deeply about something, go for it. We need you.